and their families. It was tough. It was tough ministry. I was there and also at St. Luke's Episcopal Hospital, and also made some rounds at MD Anderson. So the grounding aspect were these two photos on the right. I spent my mornings in St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, East Haddam, which was a lot like St. Matthew's McMinnville, small church. It was really, really, really grounding. Mother Rachel, who was the rector there, did an exceptional job. She was a great priest and had gone to Yale Divinity, so was able to was from South Georgia, from Statesboro, actually. It was really kind of funny. She was able to really ground me as well and say, hey, this is gonna work out. You'll be fine. In the evenings, because I needed the money and I had Sewanee, I'd done chaplaincy work at Sewanee, the Episcopal chaplain at Yale, who was a medical professor. He was a professor of neurology in the medical school, but he was an Episcopal priest. So he has sorted a kind of a cast of characters of us seminarians to kind of help with that ministry. And it was wonderful to be back with youth in the evenings. So I graduated, I'm speeding this up, 2007. Go to Albany, Georgia, ordained August the 11th, 2007. It feels like eons ago. There's, again, a picture of the family. Zach is there, now married to my sister. Ann Myers, who you just saw, preached at my ordination. Bishop Loudon, who I think is in Tallahassee, and Jan, his wife, is there now, was the Bishop of Georgia. There to the left is St. Paul's, Albany. It looks a lot, so much, it reminds me a lot of St. John's, just architecturally. There, a couple of things at St. Paul's. I had a great boss. Many of you all maybe know him. Mark Jones was his name. You might not know Mark. Mark came from Jacksonville, but you maybe know his father, Eddie Jones, who's done a lot of prison work. Eddie, I think that's actually Eddie's vestments that he let me wear on my ordination day. Mark was 29, I was 27. He was the rector, got called there. Albany was really in a kind of a big youth movement going on at that moment in time. A hard church in a lot of ways. Shortly after I left, Mark and Emily divorced, and things kind of, it was tough. I mean, there was a lot of good energy, and when you're a change agent, sometimes it feels like you're standing in the middle of the street getting hit by cars on both ways. And so good things happened there. I learned a lot about parish ministry. I actually interned there 1 year. But I'd say one of the best things that happened there is I happened to be at ordination service in Thomasville, Georgia, and I saw this lady on the right. She had just graduated from Sewanee. So my last year as lay chaplain was her freshman year. We had shaken hands probably at All Saints on the way out the door. Then I go off to Yale Divinity School for 3 years. She finishes undergrad at Sewanee for 3 years. And by fate, we meet down here in South Georgia. We start dating pretty seriously. She goes off to Chapel Hill to do a master's degree. We date long distance from Albany, and then we get engaged. So we do a long distance year, and it was like, okay, it was kind of love at first sight. We knew where we were going. We dated that year and kind of knew after that year, if we can make it work long distance, we can make it work. So it was after that engagement that, there weren't a lot of public health jobs for somebody with a master's in public health, and she toxology and epigenetics. Albany wasn't booming at the scenes for employment, and so it became clear that I probably needed to look to Atlanta as we get married. She had 1 more year, and so started putting feelers out in Atlanta, and truthfully kind of looked for that job because of her. I really was having a good time. Mark and I were having a great time in Albany. But we needed to find a place in Atlanta, Metro Atlanta, where there could be opportunity for both of us. It was just kind of the new era of clergy spouses, so you have to find things for both. And so I went to St. James in Marietta. It was a very different church. It's about 1,000 members. It had about $1 million budget. You can look at the dates and know what's going on in the history of our country. 2009. It was not a pretty time for budgets. St. James was on the end of a rector who'd been there for about 15 years. Karen Evans is her name. She was one of the first women in the Atlanta area to be a rector of a very sizable church, 1,000 members. She did a great job in a lot of respects. But there was a capital campaign to the right of that, about a $10 million campaign. And as time went on, I discovered we really only had $1 million in the bank, or $1 million we raised. So there was insurmountable debt, 3 other capital campaigns to put that thing down. And so by 2009, you really get the sense of, if you're living on the edge, you're really hurting. And so I went there in July, and I bought a house. And then Karen's like, I'm going to be around for a couple of years. And then Karen came into my office one day and said, I'm resigning. I was like, oh, I would not have bought a house. but it was for health reasons, and there was good reasons. But it kind of started beginning what I saw the ministry looking like. At the end of 2009, there was $175,000 operating deficit. And so and she left in January of 2010. And by January of 2010, I was the only priest. It had 3 clergy there when they kind of called me, and then it was just me from January to May. And so the bishop's office was like, you have $175,000 of people and programs you need to cut. And it was a very difficult time with the vestry. And, I'd only been there 2 months. I didn't know some of the poor decisions I felt like I made were just being thrust into a situation. Only 2 years ordained and having to make some major calls on that place. So it was tough. It was a tough time. I learned a lot about I remember she came in with a box of index cards and said, this is our stewardship. This is our stewardship file. And I was like, holy cow. I got $1 million I got to raise on index cards. It was crazy. But we did get an interim in May. Thankfully, they got me an interim because I was getting married. I was like, I'm not praying. I was like, you're not going to have a priest here for like 2 weeks. So they finally hired an interim. And it was a fun time during that interim time. Let's say some positive things before we get to another negative thing. They had a wonderful day's preschool down there on the corner. It was for low-income Hispanic kids. You're raised in a house where all you speak is Spanish. By the time you get to public school, and you don't know English, you're already behind. So we had a huge campus. We took our space, and we hired all these Hispanic educators to teach these children English before they got to public school. We picked them up. We had buses. It was an amazing ministry. And so some of that fundraising was to get that going and keep that going. Miss Goizueta came in from Coca-Cola and really made us very happy. We had some Coke connections. So that was a huge thing. I enjoyed being a part of that ministry. I knew a little Spanish, so it was a lot of fun. Truly at St. James, so let's go to some youth things. St. James is named after St. James the Apostle. And so for our namesake, you'll see in that top right-hand corner, I took the youth with the youth minister I'd hiked the Camino once before. Pilgrimage is a big thing for me. You'll see that over and over again. I think kids enjoy pilgrimages as well. So we hiked 100 miles on the way to the Camino de Santiago to the body of St. James. The youth minister was not thrilled by it, but the kids really did a good job. She was not a big hiker, but nevertheless, she did a great job, and it was a fun time. So those are some great highlights. Obviously, getting married, we enjoyed Marietta. The interim took a 1-year contract, so he left, and we still didn't have a rector. So from August of 2011, so about this time in 2011 to November of 2011, I was back, priest in charge, kind of back doing another stewardship campaign. And we still didn't, the search committee didn't have a lot going on. There was a contingent that wanted me to be rector, which the diocese didn't want. So I had to kind of navigate through a lot of muddy waters and spend some time with a good therapist, and just said, I don't need to be here. I know they're kind of running me, and there's, the diocese, the churches need to do discernment, right? And I would be kind of a quick fix, and there was a lot of blood on my hands already, but we had gone through it, and it was a really good time, and there was a lot of good stuff going on there. And so I kind of really began wondering what the next call would be like, and it was possibly time to leave as they came closer to getting a new rector, even though the rector they called really wanted me to stay. But something had already happened. The dean of the cathedral had already reached out. He was a good friend. I had a lot of friends there, and the cathedral, I knew Sam very well. I have a high respect for Sam. Dave, I know, is in colleague groups with him. George, the vicar of the cathedral, was a former kind of attorney, managing partner at Alston and Bird, a big attorney, is a big office in Atlanta. and I really kind of second guessed a lot of the things I did is when I was kind of thrust into leadership positions. That I didn't second guess them, but I had questions about why I was doing them, and is there better ways to do it? And a lot of things I didn't learn in seminary when you're saying, hey, you got to fire some people and figure out what the direction of this parish is. And Sam and George really had a very clear identity on how they ran the cathedral and what ministries were supposed to be like. And given the experience I had at St. James, I really kind of wanted to come to the cathedral. It was a good place for Margaret Ann and I were newlywed. We had a lot of friends, but also kind of a way to learn some of those things I was thrust into, why, how we should do that, and what it should look like. And so it was a good hire. It was a lot of fun. I was there, you can see, for 7 years, 2011 to 2018. And again, a kind of a fun time to evolve. I learned a couple of really fun things there. One was, as I said, about systems and, like, how do you do this with the endowment? Why is our operating budget looking like this? How do we restructure this? All these things that I'd had to do in Marietta, I never really had anybody giving me some guidance on. They had really clearly thought through it for years. So that was a ton of fun to kind of learn and be able to poke and prod and ask questions and do some things, do some creative things. It's a weird place at a lot of levels. It wasn't like any of the other churches. It's got 7,000 members. About 300 or 400 new members a year. I was hired for congregational life for new members, new young families, and that's 300 to 400 people a year. So that's its own parish in some respects. And it's weird, you're preaching, you don't know people. You just have to be comfortable never knowing your parishioners. I mean, you know some, but you don't know everybody. You just go out, you're sitting out there at Lenox Mall, and somebody's coming up to you because they've heard all about you, and so it's weird. It's a weird place, but it was a wonderful place. So I did do a lot about that. We also had challenges with, the diocese had a service there, a Hispanic ministry. You'll see in that bottom right corner. They left. The diocese wanted to do different things, so we kind of had this Hispanic congregation there. And how do we integrate that into the cathedral was really a lot of fun. Since I was the only one at that moment in time that knew a lot of Spanish, I got to do the services and preach in Spanish, which was scary. I always had a joke, and if they laughed, I was like, yes, I win. But nevertheless, that's some of the place. It was an exciting time. Growth kind of as a priest. I started out as canon for congregational life, some membership. I ended up doing congregational life, then liturgy when somebody left. I picked up liturgy, a lot of liturgies there on a Sunday morning. Then somebody else left, another senior priest left, so I ended up doing pastoral care. So liturgy, pastoral care, just kind of the portfolio got big. There's some of the fun videos. Peachtree Road Race. We lived in the cathedral residence, which was kind of fun. Also very interesting being on campus 24/7. There's my colleagues at the birth of my children, baptizing. It was a fun time. There the vergers are in the bottom right-hand corner, guys. I think they're trying to process people down Peachtree. I'm like, where are you all going? So trying to get them straight. It was a great time. Margaret Ann got a big promotion those last years at Flowers. While I had been in Atlanta, she had worked on the floor of the factory at a couple of the Flowers plants doing environmental stuff, learned a lot about that. And then as environmental positions began to kind of open up in Flowers, she began to kind of climb. And I think in some ways, it became there are a couple of things going on. I think it became harder for her to be a part of the corporate culture, particularly maybe as a female. I'm being careful how I say this, and to live in Atlanta when the corporate offices are here. And so much is based upon relationship. That's such a company that is relational. And so it became important for her to be down here. We also had 2 children. Living away from our parents in Atlanta, childcare prices were astronomical. I'm not even going to tell you what our account was like. Oh my God! So it became time to move. There weren't a lot of opportunities for me, so we moved for her. I had discerned kind of a call to get back into school stuff. I mean, obviously, I was at Sewanee and had some things going on there. I looked at maybe some chaplaincy searches back when I was at the cathedral, and so when we decided to move here, I said, well, I'll try teaching. And there's some great pictures. I had a great time. It was great to be with the family, great to be with the kids. I got to coach Copeland, Danielle Copeland. I think her father maybe played for FSU. Danny Copeland. No. He played in East Carolina. He played for the Redskins. But she was, my assistant coach. Ended up being Bradford's preschool teacher this past year. Golf coach. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Something was missing. That sacramental part of my life was not there. So I will be forever grateful for Dave saying, "Hey, you come to church. I see you. I kind of know you. Would you want to get involved as a priest associate?" Which was at a huge moment in time. I think it was January. It was December or January. Dave, you and I sat down and talked, and I had enjoyed having kind of a sabbatical. In many ways, the teaching was a sabbatical. So I had May, June, July, and I went to Baptist church. I went to all the different churches in Thomasville. By August, I was like, okay, I need to be in an Episcopal church. And we'd heard a lot about St. John's, and it was a wonderful place. I definitely felt the call to the community, the diversity, the energy in the worship. And so I reached out to Dave and said, hey, we're going to be there. I'll be in my civvies, and I'll try not to let anybody know I'm a priest. And occasionally you all would catch me, like I remember somebody tapped on my shoulder once and said, you sang that hymn without even looking at the hymnal. I was like, they're like, maybe you should sing in the choir. I'm like, no, they don't want me. But anyhow, so, and so that invitation was wonderful. And for a long time, it really, for at least a whole another year, I was able to teach, kind of feel the call to the ministry to be with kids and do stuff, as well as fulfill that sacramental component of my life. And it did feel like burning the candle at both ends. You're up at 5 running, then teaching. I taught 6 classes, 2 English classes, 2 Old Testament classes, 2 world history classes. So on my feet for 6 hours straight, then on the football field for another 3 hours, then at home, then doing the kids stuff, then grading papers and preparing your next lectures. And it got tiresome. Then obviously Kathy made a transition, a wonderful call for Kathy and a wonderful opportunity. And then Dave came calling again. And it was good. I was at the point with the school of really kind of saying, I had a lot of A students and a lot of C students with learning challenges. And I think one of my children has got some learning challenges. So that became even more taxing at the house of just spending some time with him. And I kind of began to question, like, you really need somebody that didn't study systematic theology. I have no training in education to be with these kids and help them learn. I just began second guessing the way I was with some of the kids that really needed some challenges of I could do this better, and I need more training to do this better. And maybe the school needs a different fit. And obviously Dave is calling, and this is a great church. This is a great clergy staff, Deacon Joe, Mother Abby, and Dave, and it's a great community. And I really feel the call to kind of be back in this ministry. So I'm going to end right there, unless I have another slide. I think that's it. And just field questions. But that's the slideshow, and that's a little over 30 minutes. I'm sorry.
Well, that was great. I love hearing the overlaps and chatting back and forth of all the wonderful common spaces and familiar faces. As I chatted to you, Anwin Myers preached at my ordination at St. John's also. And Tom Ward was brand new as a chaplain when I was an undergrad. Just sort of that small world, wonderful thing. Thank you for being vulnerable and speaking the truth. Calls to the church are not easy always. They're easy to say yes to, and then you find out the work that has to go on from there, and the gift of those struggles that form you to be who you are. We are so excited. Are there any questions? If you want to type it into, you have lots of wonderful feedback going on in the chat of thank you.
Yeah, no, I wasn't able to see the chat. So I'm sure I couldn't see for some reason my right side picture. So there could be something you're like, oh, who is that weird person?
It's okay. We'll leave it up for you.
Father Wallace, this is Dave.
Yes, sir.
What's up, Dave? What do you enjoy doing when you're not at church? Like, what do you just do for fun?
The person that I really enjoy the most right now is the one that listens to me, which is my little, come here, Leo.
The dog.
This little guy right here, Leo. I enjoy running him. I enjoy hunting him. He's a beautiful dog. But I enjoy playing golf. Here's Leo, a little English cocker. He's got stinky ears, but a good dog. So I enjoy spending time with the family. It's the harder sort of thing, and I don't know if even my family might even be on this call. I think the hard thing living further south is also kind of being attentive to Dave. Is kind of time to go back and see my folks. That's just they're. Get our watch what I'm saying here. they're not. I'm getting older. I will. The calendar will pass go another year on me this week, and they are too. So it's you want to get up there and you want to see them. And my sister lives a block away from them with her 3 kids. So I enjoy. I've made a couple of trips up there. You've heard in some sermons this year. The summer has allowed that. And it's not an easy drive, and they don't fly or travel very well at all. They're actually horrible in the car. I'll say that in public.
Who's your favorite author, Wallace?
Favorite author? Goodness. I enjoy a lot. I mean, I preached on Flannery. I enjoy some of the great Southern writers. I mean, Flannery O'Connor, Walker Percy, obviously. I enjoy going to the Walker Percy conference. Is something that gives me a lot of life. Somebody that I think tries to I enjoy him in the sense of a philosopher. He's kind of a theologian and a literary person all in one. I think Ann Patchett is great. I've really enjoyed reading her. Historian John Meacham. So I enjoy some of the living ones. I also think Ernest Gaines is somebody I had my kids read this year, just the lesson before dying. And I know he just died like shortly after I finished that book. I think he's a great Southern African-American author. And he writes just crisply and he's funny. If you've ever seen that interview on YouTube with Gaines, you should watch it. So those are some of my favorites. I could go on, but I'm not.
Father Wallace, you mentioned the importance of pilgrimage in your journey. I'd love it if you could just expand a little bit on that. I know you did the St. James. Any other experiences?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the big things of pilgrimage for me, and some of that had to do with youth work, and I know Caroline's on the call, so I might be stepping on toes, and particularly coming from, and you can shout up and say I'm wrong, but particularly coming from high school, being with high school kids, these past couple of years in an intense way, in a very different way. I think kids are way over-programmed, exhausted, and the church and our programs only add to that exhaustion. And sometimes we're trying to vie for time that isn't even there, and there's a huge amount of guilt for that. I think pilgrimages are life-changing opportunities that, in today's culture, where parents are looking for unique things and even in the school world is looking for unique things for college resumes, what sets you apart. We have the opportunity to kind of speak to that world, but also speak to our own world. Which I believe life is a pilgrim. I mean, you've seen me go to different spots. I've learned so much about God and people and myself as a result of that. And so I love, and I know Caroline does an exceptional job with this. These mission trips, pilgrimages, whatever we want to call them, are those opportunities to get with youth, to have deep relationships, to have meaningful conversations, to learn a lot about God, and to really provide a space for them to process theologically and emotionally in ways that they can't do in the daily rhythms of their current life, which I find crazy. No fault of their own. Maybe I said too much. But pilgrimage is very important. So everywhere I go, I try to do that, personal as well as corporate. I got a lot of things in here. With with my Hispanic ministry at Dennis, of course, I do miss one of the things I grieved last year, Dennis, on your question about Hispanic ministries was that I really missed, so for pretty much every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, we had the 11:15 service at the cathedral. We had multiple services going on at the same time. That's just the way the cathedral was. And there were a lot of times where we brought the communities together, but a lot of times Hispanic, they'd have their own unique kind of cultural services. So, Dennis, to your point, so about every 2 weeks I got to be in that service and just to lead it. And Deacon Juan, we finally got a deacon that preached with more regularity, which was better for them and for me. But I still had to celebrate and still had to do all the stuff, which was a lot of fun. So I did miss that a lot last year. David, favorite music, songwriters, bands, performers, classic rock. Oh, David, you're maybe not gonna like this answer. I do enjoy classical music. If I'm sitting up here working on a sermon, it's probably a Mozart Requiem. If I'm with my 7-year-old, it's definitely top country on Amazon. That's just what he likes right now. I'm going to expand his musical repertoire, but right now she thinks my tractor's sexy.
There's something about country music and 7-year-olds.
Well, yeah.
There's that.
Well, there were some other questions up here looking for you. Know you, meet you. Okay, meet you. Where's my favorite, Caroline? Where's my favorite spot at Sewanee? Ooh, that's a trick question.
I was trying to ask a question.
This is really funny. I did a lot of, probably, I think Abby, you did a lot of sports. I did crew. I did tennis one year. I ran cross country one year, which, I had the ministry of being the caboose. I do not have a runner's body. Somebody's got to be the guy, your pace guy, or your cheerleader. And so I did enjoy running the golf course. And one of my favorite spots was there's an overlook. And if you know where I'm talking, it's one of the holes that just looks over and we run the course. And I could stop right there. I'm stopping a lot, so I might as well.
Greensview.
It was a great spot.
So Megan asks, and this was one I was going to pose, is what are you most excited about in full-time ministry at St. John's? Sort of the, not culmination, but all of the gifts and talents you have and joy and passion for ministry in the areas of ministry you'll be a part of. Where's your...
Yeah, Megan, thank you. That's a great question. I think one of the things I really do, and maybe learn the hard way in the first couple of spots, I think I've got a long period at the cathedral, which was a great time, but I also got a lot of short periods. And then I got to see a lot about, there's a lot of things I had energy for, Megan, and I brought to those places. And the minute I left, they died. And I think that could be a big problem when you're a clergy person. So you go in and it's like, this is what I give. These are my gifts. I'm going to do this. I'm going to start this. And then the minute you're gone, literally about 2 weeks later, there isn't the energy in the community to sustain them. And one of the things I learned at the cathedral, one of the reasons I love being there, was my bosses were saying, every system, every community of faith has its own DNA. And the full-time, hard time being part-time, I came down to St. John's and kind of did my thing and left. And so, my boss at the other place was like, figure out the system, figure out the DNA, figure out how you can nurture that growth. So when you leave, the program and the ministry still continues. And so, Megan, this is probably a weird sort of question, a weird answer to your question, but is really understanding the DNA of this parish. I think I have seen moments of what I think is the DNA of it, of this kind of the energy, this diversity, this openness, and a lot of those core values Dave talks about. I think you're very much a part of that, and how you bring those into certain programs, and how you let things that are maybe dying. The other thing I learned at the cathedral that was very formative is we are a community of death and resurrection. And the program from 1970 that you're still trying to put on life support needs to die and be resurrected. And don't be scared to believe in the death and resurrection. And we're crying because it's not what it was 20 years ago. And it was what it was 20 years ago because some certain things were in spot. And it doesn't mean those things aren't in spot today. We just need to trust the Holy Spirit to see how we can get a program that does all those things like that, and just let it go. And so some of that is paying attention to the DNA and figuring out what we can kind of let go of and what we can kind of generate where there's energy to generate new things. It's a very superfluous answer, but I hope that makes sense. I really do believe it.
Awesome. Thanks, Wallace. We are so delighted you're now officially full-time. And as I joked, I sent him a text yesterday saying, welcome to full-time on a Saturday in COVID. Life is different, but the gift of you being a part of the team already in various ways has been delightful and an opportunity for us to just continue this journey with you. And the new energy of education opportunities and growing and continuing parish life, as we have had to say that needs to cease right now in our journey through pandemic times, but also what new ministries can come from that. The opportunities for parish buddies and small group ministries and things that fall under how do we nurture parish life in these challenging times too. So we're excited for that. Any other questions in the chat? Nobody's typing. We are so delighted you're a part of the team. Dave, do you want to say anything in closing?
All I want to say is thank you for saying yes, Father Wallace. We are so excited to
Thank you for asking.
have you have
We're
you
calling.
join the team, and it's going to be a fun journey together. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming out. Sorry, that was a whirlwind sort of tour, but you got to see it all.
Well, and what I love is each time we listen to each other's story, you're going to hear different things and common ground. Caroline and I were talking back and forth of the overlaps and the pieces I didn't know, that Marietta was up in seminary with you, and the strength of Marietta Anschutz should never be underestimated. Another redhead priest, by the way.
Yeah, she was the associate dean.
Does not surprise me.
The assistant dean, yeah, I know. And it was Marietta.
Marietta
I forgot. I said something in her office and she threw a book at me, and it was just like, oh, this is perfect. She
has got strong-willed.
Like, you can't say that. I was like, oh, I can. You gonna throw another one at me?
you were egging it on. The gift of we are all human on this journey, and it's a spiritual journey, and listening to where God calls us. Listening to in the struggles and in where that real call comes from and is affirmed, as you mentioned in your own story.
And I think the other thing I left out of that story, or I tried to put in there, is I've really loved fighting with people and God, particularly God. I think there have been moments of call that, in resisting that call, I think Jacob wrestling, I mentioned Jacob a couple weeks ago, and wrestling is a center. It's kind of is an authentic part, probably because I was a wrestler. It's really an authentic part of spiritual growth. God and I've done a number of wrestling matches, so here we are. Blessing is a part of that too, right?
The end of each wrestle, you are transformed from it. I mean, Jacob walks differently and is given a new name for the rest of his life, and that transformation that happens with wrestling. Thank you all. Just a reminder about upcoming opportunities. Remember, Wednesday night, Deacon Joe will be leading our Wednesday evening program starting at 6, which is a 3-week series on the parables. Come and join. He is a wonderful teacher, as you all well know, and we're delighted he'll be leading for the next 3 Wednesday nights. And then also next week, our speakers on climate change, Dr. Jeff Canton, I believe, I don't say the H, but it has an H in there, will be speaking about the scientific perspective of what's going on with our climate, literally the environment. Tell Margaret Ann she needs to come. And he is going to be our keynote speaker. We're delighted he'll join us. So thank you again, Wallace. We're glad you're on full time, which means a lot of weekday meetings for you and lots of fun opportunities to continue at St. John's. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Blessings.
Yay.
Welcome.
I love you, Pat. You can put her on mute, but she'll come off mute. Watch out.
Be well.
Be well, Pat. Be well. Yay. There they all go. Except for the ones who wait for you to shut it down, Claire.